Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of February 1st, 2012. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Astorian?
Here.
Commissioner Sheets?
Here.
Commissioner Yesayan?
Here.
Commissioner Lee's not here, and Chairperson Landrigan?
Here. Thank you. Can I have a report regarding the posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, January 25th, 2012, on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Abstain.
I have a couple changes.
All right.
I did note on page 2 that although previous Commissioner Kane did abstain from the vote, he didn't do it intentionally. We left that in there. That needs to be corrected, and I think that's the only one. There was one other one I had a question I've already resolved, unless there are others.
All right. With that change, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Mm-hmm.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion is approved. For our next agenda item, we have oral communications. I have no cards. Is there anyone here who's interested in speaking on anything that is not on our agenda today? So, seeing as there is no one, we will move to our item number 6, which is selection of a chair pro tem. May I have a nomination from my fellow commissioners for a pro tem?
Who wants to? Big selection.
Madam Chair, I would nominate Commissioner Sheets for Chair Pro Tem.
Any other nominations from the floor?
Can one do 2 nominations?
Sure.
I'm good.
Are you happy with
Accept.
assuming the duties? Okay. Then can I have a vote?
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Yesayan?
Aye.
And Commissioner Sheets?
Aye.
Commissioner Landrigan?
Aye. So we have a Chair Pro Tem, Mr. Sheets. Thank you very much. Moving on to our zoning appeals, we have no old business, and our new business, I need to read what it is. It's an appeal to our planning hearing officer decision. And the next item is an appeal from the decision of the planning hearing officer. This matter is heard as a de novo hearing. Testimony given at the planning hearing officer's hearing should be repeated because the commission does not review the tapes of those meetings. Decisions rendered today will be based on the evidence presented at this hearing and the evidence in the file, including appeal documents, staff reports, and letters received. Individuals speaking today should, therefore, present all the evidence that they may wish this commission to consider. A handout describing the appeals process is available at the front counter. Appeal items are considered as public hearings. The commission will consider testimony from the appellant, applicant, staff, and any member of the public wishing to speak. If you wish to speak, please fill out a card and present it to the recording secretary. Our first item is zoning item number A, setback variance case number PVAR 2010-027. And who will be presenting that?
That would be me.
All right. Mr. Baxter.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, the case behind me here, I'll just give a quick little overview so you can get some orientation of the site. Starting over here on the left side of the board, we show our overall location. It's in North Glendale at the corner of Honolulu Avenue and Whiting Woods. It's a little larger below so you can get some orientation. The property on this plan is angled more so, but this is the northerly end of the site. This is the local street over here, Whiting Woods, and this is the primary street or the minor arterial Honolulu. Over here you can see these are blow-up areas that give a little bit more clarity to the issues discussed for the fence and walls. Fence and a wood fence chain link over here on Whiting Woods, a block wall with some chicken wire over here on Honolulu. Also we have a larger view of our accessory building, which is part of our discussion today. Here's some drawings that give a small floor plan and some elevation views in relationship to the house. This is the garage area right here. You can see where the driveway goes. Additionally, there is some hardscape and basketball hoop goal right there. There is the setback, the 25-foot setback is, see it right back in this area over here. The house, at the time it was constructed in 1959, had a 25-foot setback from the street property line, 10-foot setback from the side street property line over here. So 25 and 10 when it was initially built. That pretty much gives us sort of an overview of some of the issues here that are in question. Oh, photographs. These photographs are the ones in your packet to give a quick little overview. These are more in depth. This was submitted by the applicant. It was also at the last hearing. The whole series. Staff went and made some photographs as well. This was also at the last hearing. So look at. I'll be glad to go through that with you also. Initially, the hearing officer at the public hearing, I believe July 27th of last year, heard the case and and denied the applicant's request to maintain the house, which is a storage building, as he claims, the fences, both on the side street and the Honolulu side, which would be the front street. And
Sorry, Mr. Baxter, did you say the house that was maintained to be a historic house? Is that what I just heard?
No,
One
sir,
story.
storage. I apologize.
Would you point out the items that you're talking about?
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Yes, I apologize. This is the chain link fence here. There's a small wood fence, which you'll see in the photographs. So that's one issue right there. That's the side street. Up here is a block wall in the front, facing Honolulu. On top of the block wall is a chicken wire type material, a mesh type, which is also, you can see in the photos. Behind that, in the little yard in front, is the building, storage building. It looked like it was being used for like an exercise room, and when I talked to the applicant and went out and did the photographs, it looked like it had library books and all that. The applicant said that's just storage. And then it has this hardscape and basketball pole thing out here. This is some very nice paving out there. Photographs, you can see the paving materials. So those are the items. Street front setback, wall, building, basketball, side, fence, two different materials, wood and chain link. Anyway, they're in the setback area.
Mr. Baxter, the pavings that you mentioned, the nice pavings, are these poured in concrete, or is it like
That I
the
don't
ones
know.
that...
I don't know.
Okay, we'll ask them.
If you look, sir, you will see they're like a marble material, a stone material. The owner, the gentleman's father, was a very interested in working with stonework. It was, I guess, a hobby or something that he had.
Stonemason.
Possibly so, sir. But he was quite talented at it, and you'll see some photographs that indicate that he did a good job on that. It's the location. That's our issue.
Any questions for Mr. Baxter? Is the front fence that is off Honolulu also part of the request
Yes.
of the appeal?
Yes, that was one of the issues with the staff, is there was one of the applicant's complaints in the appeal was the city should not have looked at the fences because the city council, I believe in 2005, had a resolution that says, let's not look at the fences until we solve the issue of fences in street setback areas. Now, they didn't include chain link fences. That was excluded, barbed wire fences, things of that nature. That's not out here, but anything that's a metal rail, a metal type fencing, that was not included as that exemption, but wood fences, block walls were. The difficulty with the staff's review is that when the neighborhood services first pointed out the building, we go out and look at it, and all of a sudden all these other items pop up. And there's kind of this interconnectivity of all of this, and it's difficult to kind of separate one from the other, so we kind of put it all together for the consideration. And the hearing officer heard the case, made the decision, and now it's being appealed, and the planning commission will have that same opportunity. And well, I guess I could round it because it looks like we have a lot of people who want to testify, so
Okay.
I'll wrap it up, but we can answer lots of questions on this too.
Thank you. All right. So that is our staff report. Then we now will have, the applicant can make his presentation. She will have 15 minutes. And so please identify yourself and your address.
Good afternoon, Chair Landrigan and members of the commission. I apologize for my spotty vocal carriage today, fighting a cold. Anyway, I'd like to begin by saying that the municipal code, of course, was not meant to be static and rigid in all cases. It was written with the realization that unique circumstances and unnecessary hardships can constitute enough reason to grant a variance where it's warranted and where the property complies with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance, and that's why we have the variance process, and I'm glad we do. Madam Chair, I don't know really where to put these photographs. I set them there for you to determine. There's some information on there that probably you should look at a little more closely.
We probably should put them up
Put them in
so
the back.
we can have a camera on them,
Okay.
too. If you want to continue your presentation, unless you're going to make reference to them.
I'll reference them at some point.
Okay.
In 2005, the City Council did suspend code enforcement cases on walls and fences, and a determination is still pending further direction from the City Council, and they recognize that consideration such as neighborhoods and topography still needs further discussion. So that's still on the table. The code is not static and rigid. It's not a sledgehammer that we use to throw at property owners, to throw the code at property owners and see what sticks. The city's approach to this beautiful property has been to throw the code at it and see what sticks. This is why we have an offending basketball hoop even as an issue on your plate today. We understand the code. It is the law. But the law is written while recognizing that one size does not necessarily fit all. We have a property here with heritage features throughout it. All over this property. This entire property is unique. So we ask for fairness and a reasonable determination that this property is unique with all of its features, adding up to an estate property and part of the special fabric of whiting woods. just as it is. So how will the strict application result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships? We're asking for permission to maintain an accessory structure, a room, a building, which has existed on the property without any detriment for a minimum of 50 years, but which encroaches into a setback from Honolulu Avenue. The wall of the Honolulu Avenue front of the property poses an added practical difficulty due to the grade change on the Honolulu side as opposed to the relatively flat entry on the Whiting Woods side. Due to this grade differential, a 4-foot block wall exists along the Honolulu property, with about 1 foot of landscaping mesh above it to anchor the live vegetation. And I think that must be what Chris is referring to when he characterized it as chicken wire. It's not chicken wire. It's landscaping mesh. The applicant's family has resided in the home since it was built in 1959, and as such, the property has really been an active canvas for activity and changing landscape and hardscape over the years. The accessory structure in question has undergone recent improvements simply due to age and wood rot and termite damage. On the Whiting Woods side, there's no sidewalk adjacent to the subject property, but there's a dense canopy of old-growth oak trees and other dense vegetation at the fence line and extending to the curb. If you look at my photos where it says lot exterior number 4, 5, and 6, intertwined in this greenery is a fence that has existed on the property at least the same length of time as the fence surrounding the Verdugo Wash to the rear. Our fence has existed without detriment, and we ask it be allowed to remain as it is, where it is. There being no sidewalk on that side at all, the fence is set back approximately 16 feet from the face of the curb with very dense landscape as a buffer. The fence can barely be seen, and it causes no detriment. It keeps coyotes and predators out, and it keeps the dog in the yard. We have some exceptional circumstances or conditions with this property. There is a downslope at the North Honolulu side with a grade difference of approximately 6 feet from the sidewalk above down to the building pad. Conversely, at the Whiting Woods frontage, the grade differential to the home is essentially flat. The elevation drop from Honolulu then effectively obscures the accessory structure from public view behind more indigenous vegetation and old-growth foliage. The accessory building has functioned through the years as a wood shop, a sculpting wood shop for stonemasonry art. It's been a lapidary shop and a tool shed, a storage building for home and garden tools. It's been a playhouse for children and grandchildren, and storage for workout equipment and holiday decorations. This structure has afforded the family a place to conduct many ancillary activities over the years, but it's never intensifying the permitted single-family use of the property in any way. It has no kitchen, has no bathroom or plumbing. It's never functioned as living space or as a bunkhouse or sleepovers or a residential unit, and it never would or could function as such. It's strictly a utility structure for the accessory use of the property owner. Relocating it to the patio area, as was suggested by staff, would obscure the bedroom windows and quite possibly interfere with some of the neighboring live oak tree roots. This would move it closer to the neighbor's home, and under today's strict protection of oaks, it's unlikely that the building could be relocated or the home remodeled to add this square footage. It's a practical difficulty, it's an unnecessary hardship, and logistically it's impossible. This variance request can be approved in consideration of hardship and practical difficulties not anticipated by the code. The hearing officer suggested at the hearing that we move it up on top of the house. We suggest that would be a practical difficulty and disturb the canopy of the oak trees. The structure would not be suitable for relocation elsewhere on the property, either due to massive live oak canopy and root system transecting almost the entire property, along with other indigenous and old-growth plants. And there's an old experimental orchard of fruit trees the family has cultivated over the years at the rear of the property near the Verdugo Canyon flood control channel, which is shown on the second photo on the right down. The orchard and the surrounding gardens are perfectly located where they are. There exists a vegetable garden area, an arbor, a gazebo, and a vast network of heavy and durable stone mosaics made from self-collected material that was hand-cut and hand-set on site at the location. And this really leaves us with no alternative but to ask for the relief that we seek, to allow the accessory structure to remain where it is by invoking this variance process. That's why we're here today, and this request certainly meets every test and should qualify for relief under this very process. The variance process exists for situations where the code could not have anticipated unique lot configurations and site constraints such as we have here. Moving the structure would cause an unnecessary hardship to the property and cause distress to the neighbor. Removing it altogether would diminish the functionality of the property that the property has enjoyed for decades without any detriment whatsoever. And as for the fence along Whiting Woods, it was erected at the same time the fence along both sides of the Verdugo Wash were installed. We surmise that our fence has been in existence a minimum of 50 years, again, with no detriment, as it is set back approximately 16 feet from the curb of Whiting Woods. There is no sidewalk on that side, and it supports old-growth live plant material. Removing it would cause the destruction of a densely, lush, decades-old, and well-maintained landscape feature. As mentioned in the staff report, some of this old-growth landscaping is protected by our code, and its disturbance and removal should be considered an undue and unnecessary hardship. There is no sidewalk there, and the setback from the roadway is more than adequate for pedestrian and vehicle separation. This meets the intent of the code, certainly. Why will the granting not be detrimental to the public welfare? The accessory room has existed in the present location for 50 years without any indication of detriment. It was recently upgraded due to age and wood rot, but the intent of that was both to eliminate the rot and the termite infestation and be more architecturally compatible with the house. If the structure is not allowed to remain, the owner will be at a disadvantage, losing the use of an integral part of the property with no option for moving it anywhere without unnecessary hardship to result, and being unable to expand the house to accommodate the needed room for fear of causing harm to the oak trees and certainly causing distress to the neighbor. So while granting the variance would not be detrimental to the public welfare, not granting the variance would definitely be detrimental to the property and to the property owner and to the public. There's a dense landscape buffer at the Honolulu property line that obscures the roof line of the structure to a great degree. The neighboring property owner to the east has no objection to the structure remaining where it is, and the only neighbor to the rear of the property is that Verdugo Wash. The neighbor to the east does object to moving the structure any closer to his property, and if moved to the patio, it would move the structure closer to his property. And it would cause the entire layout of our house to have to be restudied and changed, as it would wipe out windows, light, impede circulation, which is contrary to the intent of the code. The wall in the front also acts as a barricade of sorts for vehicles traveling at a high rate of speed on Honolulu Avenue. There have been accidents out front, and the wall in place also serves as a barrier to keep vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians from falling down into the property. That wall has been in place since approximately 1960. Photographs 1, 2, and 3 on lot exterior will show the front on Honolulu. There are exceptional circumstances applicable to the subject property due to its unique configuration and its abundance of mature vegetation. There exists more than adequate separations of property features from the neighboring properties and parcels and from the public right-of-way. In front of the property on Honolulu, there exists a large utility obstacle, which is I guess it's an electrical vault of some kind. This vault encroaches in the public right-of-way on Honolulu in front of the property. The ordinance was created in part to provide uniformity to a neighborhood and to determine the relationships and the placement between structures. Setbacks allow certain measures of privacy between neighbors. They provide space for light and air circulation, provide open space for landscaping and recreational use. The intent of the code is met with the current placement of all of the lot features and structures. The lot constraints and the elevation differences are unique situations which, if applied strictly, in this case, would unfairly restrict the property owner from the full use and the enjoyment of his property, especially in light of the dense landscape buffer which serves to shield the structure from public view.
I do want to remind you that I realized I have two cards here that are apparently the owner
Mr. Peach?
and the applicant, and they can only speak in your 15 minutes too, so
What are we at?
I don't know, but I just wanted to remind you so that
Okay.
if they wanted to speak, that you were
I'm just
aware
about-
of that.
Well, I will wrap it up. I'll just say the subject property otherwise complies with every ordinance, and it complies with the spirit and the intent of the code with respect to setback and frontage. The code allows for flexibility in its definition when the intent of the code can be met, and I will wrap it up so that Mr. Peach can
Okay,
this
thank
time.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janelle. Madam Chairman, fellow board members, my antagonist over here at the city. Hi, Chris. Wolfgang, good to see you. Always. City attorney's here. I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to behave myself. You won't have to use those handcuffs, okay? I'm the culprit. I'm the reason that this is all happening here. I moved into the property September 1st, 1959. My father built the property. And he was a bit of, he loved to work with his hands. And he had a 24-inch diamond saw, and we did a lot of cutting together. And the question was the 2x2, they're called stones. They're 2 inches by about 2 feet by 2 feet. And he'd lay those down, pour concrete on top of them, all different types of rocks, from mariposite to geodes to onyx, from all over the country. We would take vacations, and he'd bring the rocks home and would cut it up. So that's all over the backyard. And in front of the baseball, which Chris was applying to or talking about, in front of the basketball hoop, I should say, those are the stones. But the wall was put in 1960, right after we moved in, to give us some security. There were dogs wandering in the backyard, and also people could wander in. The property at that time, Honolulu, was much narrower. They widened it in 1965. So he put that wall up, and I was asked if he got a permit. Evidently, he didn't. Chris pointed out to me there wasn't anything in the file. But within about a year after that, our neighbor on the east side, a wall was put all the way down the middle there, too, to basically divide the properties. And the homeowner that's living there right now is here, and he can address that wall a little bit, because part of the problem with tearing this wall down, it's also retaining hillside that would fall into his property right now. So that really wasn't addressed. The basketball hoop my dad put up, I started shooting baskets around 63, 64, and it's still there today. The kids in the neighborhood use it. I've got some letters from the kids that, if you'd like to see it. So, and the fence on the other side, on the Whiting Wood side, was put up. Actually, the metal posts were there when I was a little boy, and I know the fence was always there. And it's been there for so long that even Chris, I know when he and I talked about it, he goes, you can't even see it, but I better put it in the report. And I think he kind of alluded to that as well. But it's covered with ice plant, and it's camellia growth around there. The oak trees, actually one oak tree is right up against it, but you can't even see that it's there. So I would really ask that, if you'd like to see this, come out to the place. I'll give you a tour. You can see this. It's, for one thing, for having my consultant Janelle talk about it. I can sit here and tell you about it. And I'm living at the property now. I recently moved back in, and that was after my mom had passed away, and I went through a divorce, and that old structure that was there needed fixing up, and that's what I did, and that's why I'm in trouble, I guess. I didn't go through the right way, and the city attorney even got her laughing back there, too. So I want to stay on your good side. Just want to let you know that. The yellow light's on. I do know I have 1 minute, but I do want to invite you to come look at the property, because I know that it's tough to make decisions here, and you guys see probably a lot of things, but I just ask you to come and look at it if you're on the fence on this thing. No pun intended, but I know there's plenty of other people to talk about it here. But the one thing that I do want to address is the structure. It can't be moved really to the patio. That was Mr. Baxter's idea, and this man right here is my neighbor, and he means a lot to me, and I don't want to upset him. And I don't want to move it. I can't move it in the back of the yard either because of the tree canopy. I was told I couldn't because of the oaks. And Wolfgang, if you want to come up and help me, move that thing on the roof of my house and help me pay for it, hey, you and I can do that together. But right now, I would prefer not to do that either. So I just want to thank you for your consideration and time. Yeah, and I know there's other people that want to speak to.
Thank you, Mr. Peach.
Thank you. Were there any questions, or do we do that later?
We can ask for some questions, but I do have Mr. Ball here. Is he also? He's part of the applicant.
Oh.
All right. So if you were going to speak, it would have been in this 15 minutes. Is there something? Okay. All right. He wrote applicant, so that's. Thank you for that clarification.
I was so busy. I think he went down and put his name on the applicant side when it was really me. So
are there any questions?
I do, Mr. Peach, I do have a question for you. This patio, where there may have been a suggestion for the structure to be moved to,
yes.
Is it poured in concrete, or is it just pavements that can be moved? I want to know how permanent this thing is.
Okay. We've been talking about two patios. There's the square stones, which we call the paver. The paver stones are right in front of the basketball hoop.
That I got, yes.
Okay. The other part of the patio my dad put in around 1960 also. I don't know the foundation of that. I believe it's just probably 3 or 4 inches. I don't know if you did any. I just poured concrete there. Yes. Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the applicants?
Okay.
Appellants, actually. Thank you. You will have time for rebuttal after we have the public speak.
And I do have one other neighbor here, Fran Mead, who has to teach a Bible study. And
I'm going to take her first.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Francine Mead.
Yes, ma'am.
Please
I live
state your
across the
name
street.
And your address.
3123
And you will
Honolulu.
have 3 minutes.
I could do it in less.
All right.
I live across the street, and when I step out on the porch, I look at Mr. Peach's property, and I can't see a wall. Okay? I can't see the shed. Now, when I walk a dog along Honolulu,
Would you move your microphone closer to you? Sorry.
When I walk along Whiting Woods Road, there's that chain link fence, which you can't see. But I share that dog with Mr. Peach. And it is a 90-pound German Shepherd that he has in the backyard, and it could jump the fence. And he is the licensed owner. So I just take care of it periodically because I like dogs. How are you going to work the dog into the piece of property? It just seems like you're taking away the right of privacy from Mr. Peach by these changes that are being suggested. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask
Sure.
the speaker a question?
Ms. Mead,
Oh, yeah?
one of the commissioners would like to
Maybe
address
about
you.
3 or 4 years ago, there was a horrendous accident
Oh, yeah,
on
been
your
another.
site where the car went into, I think it was it wasn't Christmas Eve, but probably Easter or something like that. The car went into a house with
Yes.
walls and a
Yes,
gate
right
in the
across
middle.
the street.
How far are you from that house? You're to the east or to the west of that?
I'm right where that house there that you see across the street where the cars are.
Right.
I'm the one next door. So pretty much right across from Whiting Woods Road. And yes, that was more than 3 years ago.
Right.
Where the man flew out of the car and ended up in the middle of Whiting Woods Road, knocked the house across the street off the foundation. There have been 12 deaths since I've been there, and I moved in 1972.
On the street?
But that's on the street because of the curb.
I was walking, and I witnessed that one accident. I just didn't want to date myself. This is why I said 3 years.
You're doing fine.
You read
You're
about
doing
it.
fine.
No, I was walking the street when it happened.
Well,
Really?
Lucky to
if
be
I did
here.
that, I'd be in trouble.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mead. Gigi Greer.
Hi, my name is Gigi Greer. I am, my husband and I, Michael Greer, are neighbors of Jim Peaches. I'm speaking on behalf of my husband because he has a vocal condition and is unable to speak. I just found out about this as we walked in the door, so I'm utterly embarrassed and unprepared. I'm not a speaker. I'm a simple person. From that simplistic point of view, I just look at this entire situation. I think of where do codes and all this fit in the lives of people who live every day? And I come back to, if it ain't broke, why fix it? You know, he's got a beautiful yard. You can't see any of these walls that he's talking about. The dog does need a place. We have a huge coyote problem in our neighborhood. It does keep the coyotes out. We recently had mountain lion problems, a lot. The retaining wall that resides on Honolulu and comes down onto our property would be a major problem. If he had to remove it, it would then become my problem, because now I've got 4 to 5 feet of dirt that's going to be coming down into my property. That retaining wall also that holds up the dirt, holds up an oak tree that's in that dirt. So now the entire oak tree is going to come down? So it's just like, God, this just seems so complicated. And I again, frankly, I'm not a codes person. I don't understand. We're all living happy lives there. Nobody's been inconvenienced. I don't understand. So, anyways, that's all I guess I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Greer. Jack Varengolds.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Mr. Peach. My name is Jack Barangles. I live at 3610 Mesa Lila Lane in Whiting Woods. I've lived there for 26 years. I am a past president of the Homeowners Association, the former delegate to the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council, and these days I'm a director at large, which probably means why I'm here, because most people have a hard time making it to these meetings. I said I've lived for 26 years, and for 26 years I've seen or not seen the details that are in question here this evening. I'm pleased to see that there are people that live immediately adjacent. I assumed the Greers were the people that complained about the structure. I was wrong. I'm very pleased to be wrong. I will tell you that no one, to the best of our knowledge as the board of the Homeowners Association, knows anyone that has any objection whatsoever to the details on the Peach property. As a matter of fact, Frank Peach, James' father, was one of the founders of the Homeowners Association, and it was alluded to, we have Homeowners Association meetings for years in the yard, so I'm pretty familiar with the details. But even when you're all around, and I walk my dog by there every other day, that's about what you have to do to even see the wall on the Honolulu side. And I lived there and walked my dogs by there for years without even realizing there was a fence on the Whiting Woods side. I'm not exaggerating. It's absolutely the truth. It was this sort of thing brought it to my attention. So on behalf of the Homeowners Association, Whiting Woods Property Owners Association is our official legal name. the attorneys over there. I'd please grant this variance. It is absolutely a lovely place, and it is of no bother to anyone else except the code enforcement people of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeremy Ball, who is not the applicant.
The
May I
original
change?
applicant, yeah. I'm Frank Peach's semi-adopted son, one of the few people that went through Montrose, Rosemont, and La Crescenta schools with a single mother. And I became friends with Jim, and I met Frank and Pat, and they sort of adopted me. I actually had a 3-hour talk with my dad a week before he died. And it's just, I grew up there. I spent more time there because my mom was working. She was never home. So Frank and Pat took me in. Whiting Woods Association, Frank Peach started that. The Whiting Woods Patrol, they would do the community patrol long before they were ever formed. We even have a sign still up in the garage where that he had made. I learned in working with Mr. Baxter a whole lot of law and city codes in that. The purpose of setbacks, well, that's kind of unclear other than what our professional consultant said. Uniformity of appearance, so you don't have a monstrosity up next to you. Aesthetically pleasing, so in the neighborhood you have a consistency when you go about and it looks comfortable. I've been back east and I've seen some uncomfortable neighborhoods. In 1965 they widened Honolulu, and for some reason the city didn't do a uniformity, because if you look at the curb, they did a merge lane like the freeway in the widening, virtually, using that word cautiously, encroaching upon the setback. It is the only property on Honolulu that has an angled curb. So this has constricted the appearance, but still, you can't see it. If you look at the front of the property as you come down, you will see there's bushes. It looks like there's a glen. Unless you're standing at the top driveway, you cannot see the property. It's hidden. I also learned that the city assigned a Whiting Woods address when he built it in '59, which would certainly give the implication that the front of the property is on Whiting Woods versus the side setback. Now, the code does state on this type of property, I learned it from Mr. Baxter, that the front's actually Honolulu, but this is a Whiting Woods address, 616 Whiting Woods, and the address is usually the front. So when we fixed the building, we fixed it because it was starting to look like an eyesore when Jim moved back in. I played basketball with that. The stepping stones, I've heard a lot of confusion. There is a patio, a cement patio, in the angle behind the garage. If you look at the picture back here on the wall, it's in the direct right angle of the green behind the garage area. That is within code, that is within setback. To the north of that, in back of the accessory building, are these temporary stone stepping stones that I sat and made with my dad. I believe that it should stay. It's not a problem with anyone until the city said, oh, look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. I have one more. Rick Barnes.
Good evening, Commissioner and Commissioners and city staff. My name is Rick Barnes. I'm a resident of Glendale. I'm also a real estate broker. I was present at a couple of the meetings that I think bring focus on this, and one was the May 31st, 2005, where the City Council was talking about the fences. And being present there, they actually were talking about just this type of issue. Number one, the safety issue, and I'm shocked because I didn't know about 12 deaths at that intersection. I had an office building right here on Broadway, and right across from Mario's, and a car got hit, spun out, and hit the front of my building. So I'm a much more of a nut about safety issues and those walls being there. The other part is having a growth screen like that to help make that look nicer. truly seems to me like when I read this other part of a strict intent versus, a strict code enforcement instead of the intent, I actually believe that if you watch the tape on the May 31st hearing, that you'll get that the council was actually talking about just this instance. The other one that I was at was on the floor area ratios. And when I look at this property, again, they were talking about the variance, and I think sometimes I hear how they want to really be strict about it, but on the other hand, this property with all those old oak growth, and if you go to the property, and again, you're on the front of the house, there's that slope going up to Honolulu. That wall is really a safety aid. In the front there is actually something that says Whiting Woods also, so there's another wall there that's part of the homeowner associations. And as that slopes down, yes, there is that fence, but it took me forever to actually look at and see the fence because it's just so part of the landscaping. So when I'm looking at this, I was going, boy, they really, really are trying to take this to the strictness of the rules and not as to, is it something that's pleasurable for the people that drive by? I mean, that's a great entry property to the Whiting Woods. And as a broker and knowing values or protecting values up there, I have no reason why you guys would want to not do anything except allow a variance there. So, and I've found Jim to be an honest and a truthful man over the years that I've known him, and including his parents. And it was really great to hear about his stepbrother here also. But I sure hope you guys will pass this through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. I have no more cards, so I'm going to ask the applicant. There does not need to be a rebuttal period. If you want to rebut the positive statements that we've heard. But you may be able to respond.
I was still here waiting to hear from Wolfgang here if he's going to help me move that up on top of the roof here, depending on... You got the hammer and nails ready to go, Wolfgang, so you let me know.
If there are, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, just thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it, and the offer is open. I know this can be difficult at times. I know last time Mr. Krause asked me about precedent, and I did go out, and I found about 16 other sites that are similar to this. I did not present them here today. I'm hoping, based on what we have here, it'll be enough. If we have to go the next step, we will. But I would ask all of you, if you're, again, sitting on the fence, no pun intended, to please come over. The blood oranges are not ripe this time of year, but I've got caramandrins, and I'll give you a tour of the place, and you can see that the fence is what it is. So, and the wall, too.
All right. Well,
I'll make sure the dog's
nice
over with
offer.
Fran. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners before I close the public hearing? Is there... would the staff like to add anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a...
No.
Staff has made its presentation. If you have specific questions, or if you'd like to hear from the hearing officer, you can ask that. But we've made our presentation otherwise.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Hussein.
Yeah. How was this originally cited? How does that process happen?
There was
complaint
a complaint made in, I believe it was 2009. Neighborhood Services staff then went out, did an inspection, found the building under a late stage of construction, and cited the applicant.
But you, in the report it says 2004 it was cited.
For the fence.
So how is that? So there was a complaint again. So there was a complaint in 2004 and then there was another one in 2009?
Let's back up. Yeah. What triggered this case right now was the building. That's what triggered it. Then staff went out, me, to do the initial inspection once this initial variance came through. And I said, gosh, what about these fences and walls? What about this basketball court? What am I supposed to do with this? Because they're all in setback areas, and they're so close together, it's hard to separate one from the other, because to get to the house, you're right next to the basketball court, and you got to go over the wall. So then I started raising questions about that. Then I found out in 2004, Neighborhood Services cited the applicant for that fence. And so then they put it on hold because in 2005, City Council, as stated, that they asked to put it on hold, except for chain link fences. So I'm
They
not
just
sure
hadn't
why.
been followed up.
It's on hold, sir. But I'm not sure why the chain link was not followed up on, because the fence that they were cited for was the chain link fence. But I guess they just put everything on hold because City Council said put fences on hold. So once, again, that's what triggered it. That building, that was a complaint. The applicant, the Neighborhood Services went out, checked it out, wrote them up, staff responded with a field inspection based on the variance, and all these other things, became aware. We've had to figure out what to do with it because this may come up in a hearing. Who knows? See, the difficulty with staff's situation is that everything the applicant and the neighbors have said are very legitimate. I wrote down just a couple of ideas. Longevity of use. Not seen, not a problem, not bothering anybody. That's legitimate. It's a complementary use. It's compatible with the site itself and with the community. There's public support. The individuals who own the property and operate the property, his parents and the current applicant, are all good people. So what's the problem, city? The problem is we are here to review this based on an initial complaint. Now, that person's not here. I asked who was it. They say they don't even take records of it.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. That's the complaint we know directly about.
Correct.
There was mention that there might have been another complaint earlier.
No, I did not.
Okay.
That was mentioned.
Was there one?
Don't know, sir. I didn't
You
follow
don't.
up.
So this is the only complaint we know of.
This is the only one that I am aware of.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And that was about the fence, not the structure.
The complaint was about the structure.
It was about the structure.
Nothing about the fence. Nothing about the basketball court. Nothing about the hardscape.
And when was that complaint filed? Or
In 2009.
in 2009?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when the citation was written. 2010, the application came in.
So that was around the time when he was renovating? There was renovations
That
happening?
would be the specific time.
This is probably construction, okay. So,
if I may, at the hearing, the original hearing, there was a difference in the way the roof was. For instance, it was a slanted one roof. Now it's different now. The applicant did say it's the same footprint. Well, now, we never had any photographs.
because you don't have records of what was before,
Well, we don't
so
even
you
have
have no
any
idea.
photographs from the applicants. There's not any family photos around the building. There's not any, there's nothing. There's nothing that indicates, no blueprints of the original building, nothing. Nothing to show that there was a building there originally. The applicant has stated as such. Neighbors have stated that there was a building out there. Nobody has stated that that building may have been demolished and rebuilt to what it is now, bigger and better, more permanent. We don't know. The other building was, in the applicant's term, a shack. We don't know. So the staff is kind of in a quandary, and unfortunately, in this case, we have to wear the black hat. But that's what it is.
It's pretty much in fashion nowadays.
Yes, it is. That's pretty much the way it has to be. That's the city council's direction.
Are there other questions?
Yes, I do. I have one more question.
Your story.
There was a mention in the staff report that one of the reasons why the hardship finding cannot be made is that this structure can be relocated to other
Yes,
locations.
that's correct, sir.
And the location that was suggested, hypothetically,
Yes.
was that wider portion of the pavement on
That's
the
correct.
south side of the property, right?
That's correct. You can see a bit of it in the overhead view over there.
Okay.
It would be a redesign of the building for sure. We're not talking about just picking up this building and moving it over there.
Right.
Our office reviews projects all the time for 200, 300, or much larger additions to existing homes. And people go in and they just remodel to make it work. What the building is being used for now, when I looked in it, was exercise equipment, shelving on a wall with some books, possibly other things, maybe trophies and things, and a little closet. Now, that could be added to a room and just become a room, part of a room. It's of a house. with some remodeling and make it a house addition. It is not so much picking up a house or a structure and exceeding an accessory structure in the same dimension and size right there. It means expense. It is inconvenient, but if it had been initially brought to us, it would be something we would have looked at.
Madam Chair, if I may continue, and this is to elucidate I need to find out about this thing.
Yes, sir.
Did we, as staff, as city, ever talk to our city arborist or an arborist to see if the construction of a room or a structure that size on that patio would have the potential of agitating the oak trees' growth or be detrimental to the oak trees?
Yes, I did. I spoke with them. I spoke with on a couple occasions, and their concern was the backyard. There is an oak tree on the neighbors, so if you look at the overhead, it's to the right. I went out and I've, at least 2 different occasions, on and off the property, have stared at it, and the oak tree drip line is barely over the property line, if it even reaches the property line, at least when I was out there. There is room to put the building in there, in that corner area. Granted, it would be an expense and an inconvenience and a remodel of the house for their addition, but it would not impede upon the drip line of the tree. That's through my conversations with the urban forester on that.
And they agreed with that?
Absolutely. Give you a name, I give you a contact number, and
it's not necessary. I'm just. But thank you, Madam Chair.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
I'm sorry, Mr. Peach, but I haven't closed the public hearing, but we're actually discussing it with staff right now, and the public hearing you already called. So it's not a dialogue. I'm sorry. But we may ask you a question later on. So,
Please do, because that's
Mr. Hussein, you have any other questions for staff?
Can you guys elaborate a little bit on the widening that they talked about several times on that?
Honolulu.
Yeah, and how that affected the property, if at all?
it did not impede on the right-of-way width did not change.
Mm-hmm.
What changed was paving and sidewalk moving closer to what was landscaped area, because they had a very large curb to property, very large curb to property line distance. I'm sorry, this is the opposite. They had a very small curb to a very small property line distance, but they had from property line to curb, they had a very large distance, much like on the side yard.
So the sidewalk was larger?
No. It was all landscape.
Oh.
But when you look at it, initially that was, Jim mentioned, Mr. Peach mentioned, that was a 2-lane street. This visualized, if you look up there right now, a 2-lane street up there, everything else must have been landscaping.
So are you saying that
Slowly widened it over the years.
the curb line, if you look at this Honolulu, the first, not the center line, not the turn area there, but just south of that, the curb might be out in that area?
They even had curb back in the day.
Well, that's a good point. But all I'm saying is, when it was widened, which it was widened significantly, I worked up there in the 70s, you've now created a situation where the curb has drawn closer to the property line.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
now we have the issue. If it would have stayed where it was, this would have never been an issue.
No, actually, no, because, see, the property line to the house has always been 25 feet.
From the property line,
From the street property
setback
line.
comes from the property line to wherever the structure is. That's what
that's
code
correct.
requires.
Not a problem.
That's what it requires, see.
And it was a lot more open area out there.
So there was
Exactly.
a borrowed landscape.
It probably looked like a 50-foot setback or 60-foot
A
setback.
lot of those houses weren't there.
But that was public right-of-way area.
Yeah.
And that's why the building that, if there was a building, as Mr. Peach is saying, that's why you probably never would have seen it. Because it's probably 50 or 60 feet from the street, but not from the public right-of-way.
Can I see those pictures?
You can. Are there any other questions from the commissioners?
I'm good.
I have a question then for Mr. Baxter. So the complaint was filed in 2009 because work was being done that did not have a permit. Is that what the intent of the complaint?
We asked for some specifics on that. They don't have specifics. They just said that the building was being constructed without permits. But we don't know what stage it was when somebody called it in.
So then my second question is, so there are no permits for the building now or previously in 59?
We could not find any for the accessory building.
And there were no aerial photographs that the city engineer ever took that show a building there?
We did have, yes.
Yes, we have in our office a set of old aerial photos taken from an aircraft, black and white, that to me show a building in that location much smaller than the one you see today.
Okay.
With the shed roof that was described by the applicant.
You have a photo from what year?
Don't know what year. Probably in the 70s.
So when you flew an aerial of
Yeah, for the whole city, right. We have, it's very difficult, but you can see a shadow that clearly, to me, reflects a much smaller building in the same location.
Do we have that? Do we have that photo?
Here.
We have it back in the office.
It's probably a large.
No, it's not in there.
Not on your files.
No, it's only a hard copy.
Those were my questions. Before we close the public hearing, do the commissioners want to ask the appellants anything or more questions?
I'd like to, Mr. Peach, if I may ask him a question.
Mr. Peach, would you please come up and you will be able to answer the questions of the commission.
Oh, thank you. I'm dying to speak again now. I wasn't before.
But we are, just please answer the questions of the commission.
It'll be really concise. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Story.
The staff alluded to the fact that about the drip line from the neighbor's oak tree and so forth, and I saw some sort of a disenchantment in your face, so please elaborate on that on your side.
If I could,
But just that.
My stepbrother met with the city arborist. Bottom line was she came out, she looked in the backyard, it couldn't be placed anywhere else. That is exactly what she said. We're looking for the reports that she gave us now, but that was what she told us. And that's what she told him, that he could verify. That's why when Mr. Baxter's saying, it can be moved down there, the city arborist that was out there told us it couldn't. Isn't that correct, Chris?
Correct. It cannot go in the backyard. I agree with him 100%.
Yeah.
Not the backyard. We're talking about the front yard.
No, wait. What is the front you're talking about?
Well, actually, let's keep it to answering the question and not having a dialogue.
So you do have a staff report that is stating that the structure cannot be moved to the backyard.
Again, I think there's great confusion on what is the front and what is the back. I term the backyard heading south toward El Lado and where the tree canopy is, where the orchards are. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, is that where she went in the backyard, not where the structure is now, not on the patio, what they're talking about, but in the backyard where the trees are, it could not be moved there, is what she told us. Because when this whole process started, that's where we went to, is to the arborist, to see if it could be moved. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So are you talking about the area on the corner of Honolulu and Whiting Woods? Is that what you're...
Where the structure is
Could
now.
would you like to point to it up here?
Right here.
Maybe you could do it, because
You can point to it up on the map here so that we can clarify this.
With the structure, the arborist told me this entire area, the drip line, the canopy, that there's no place to put it. Also, the neighbor's tree here, the drip line does encroach on this permitted patio where it cannot be moved back here. It comes right to the edge of this. So the neighbor's tree, the drip line affects this, which is technically a back patio behind the garage, but this is the front of the property according to code.
Right.
So it cannot be moved there because of the neighbor's drip line, and it cannot be moved anywhere here because of the entire property drip line.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, we found it.
All right.
On our original application, It says, "All other available and unusable space on property is covered with old-growth indigenous trees, rendering the currently used area as the only viable location for this structure. See attached letter from the Urban Forestry Department that you have in your file."
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Foy.
Yeah, I would just like to make the point that in order to grant a variance, the Commission just needs to make the variance findings for the proposal as it is. You do not have to make a finding that moving a structure or compliance with code in some other way is absolutely impossible.
We're not here to redesign this, I understand. Thank you for clarifying that.
But Madam Chair, if I may, that's an interesting point of view, because our staff report suggests where it could be moved to. And if we are considering what's in the staff report, it'll behoove me or us to consider what the staff report says.
Let me clarify. Are you saying that it was in the report, or they're reporting that it could be moved elsewhere?
It could be moved
It could be moved elsewhere. That was it. Not where, but just moved elsewhere. So what you're trying to say is, where did he get that point relative to what the findings were around the trees? Is that what? And that would be my question. I agree. He said that, but now we have something that says it couldn't be.
Right.
So that's the uncertainty in my mind.
It goes to the question of how the Commission weighs the practical difficulties, which is one of the findings.
And if I may say, what I think the staff report said to me is that there are other ways that the square footage could be dealt with that are feasible, and that putting it here in the front yard setback, which is not to code, is in violation of code, and there are code-compliant areas that it would work with. I think that's all it said to me. I think Mr. Baxter or Mr. Kraus saying it can be on the roof, or just saying that the square footage can go other places that do not interfere with the canopy and that are within the setbacks.
I just find it interesting that we weren't shared the arborist report, though, saying, almost contradicting that.
Actually, it's right here.
Was it in the report here?
No.
I think it might be.
It should be.
It was not within our staff report. So.
Oh, you know what it was?
It was in there.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
I have one more question for
Mr. Peach?
Mr. Peach.
Madam Chair, may I see that?
Oh, yes.
What was your extent of your renovations in '99?
In '09?
Yeah, and in '09.
I moved back in '08, and there was some extensive termite damage, as Janelle said. And what I ended up doing was taking the walls down and reinforcing that with new 2x4s.
The walls of the
existing structure. I put new 2x4s in them and ran new wiring in them, and ended up putting a new roof on. Before, as Wolfgang has stated, you can see from the air, it was a lean-to, so that the roof was lean to the side. And I tried to conform to make it a little bit more conducive to an architectural review, which was probably the wrong thing to do. It's a little bit, probably should have just left it alone looking back at everything I've been through here. But to answer your question, supported the walls, new electrical, and new roof. And I guess what I'm asking for is let's go through the permit process so that we can get that permitted and get it done right.
Thank you, Mr. Peach. Any other questions?
No, not.
Thank you.
The applicant.
The offer's still open. Come on out and take a look at it.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, may I close the public
No, I
hearing?
have one more question for
All right.
staff. If they did end up getting a variance, would a permit process happen for the building?
Well, they would have to, yes, they would apply for a permit, and the regular process would happen as if it was an allowed use in the front setback, including walls, fences, things like that.
But since they built it without a permit, it may not be built according to the building code,
Right.
too. So
Right.
it may still have to be torn down. So the reality is that because there was no permit process, even if the variance goes through, it may be a tear down per the city code.
So there would have to be a process where staff goes out, code enforcement goes out there, and they inspect the property, and then they evaluate if this needs to be torn down or not.
Well,
Is that
I don't
what
know.
the process is?
I don't know what the process.
No, the process would be the applicant would, if this is approved, the applicant will submit plans. We will look at the plans and see whether it's exemptable from design review, whether it meets building and safety codes and engineering codes and things of that nature. Water and power, make sure no easements. There's a whole process of
Right.
the plan check.
And then that's where the evaluation happens.
When they submit a set of
I got it.
engineering drawings and things like that.
But that's for the structure. The
And
other
the
issue
walls.
is, and the walls.
Both of them.
Okay,
If
but,
it's a retaining wall, it has to be structurally substantiated.
but as far as the wires and so forth,
It would still
it's a
have-
different-
In essence, he will probably prepare as-built plans, and if those as-built plans meet city codes, then there will be inspections. If they don't, then there will, it's a fairly complicated process. Any other questions
No,
from?
but I do have a comment. The resolution that was adopted by the City Council in 2005 specifically says that fences that are built after 2005 or fences constructed at any time of chain link, barbed wire, razor wire, fiberglass, chicken wire, or fences which are electrically charged. We don't have too many of those around, I hope. But, so, I mean, this was pretty clear.
It was pretty clear. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to close. Does staff have any comments before we close the
Can I
public?
just give my comment at the
Oh,
end? So it doesn't get lost?
The
At these
arborist.
facts.
Well, I just
The
want to put it in the
arborist?
file. Just want to put
Thank
it's
you.
always here for your review.
Madam Chair, I did want to make one more comment without getting into the specifics of this case. We just had the North Glendale, as you know, the North Glendale Community Plan adopted and some related zoning. And now for the North Glendale Community Plan area, including this, people have the ability, generally on a block, at least a block scale, to apply for a fence overlay zone. So that is something that has just changed very recently. So, in effect, that is the solution for North Glendale. The rest of the community we haven't dealt with yet.
That's
That
correct.
doesn't mean, that doesn't prevent people from applying for variance, but that's an additional tool that didn't exist
Previous to the past.
just recently, right?
All right.
So the residents there can ask for.
It's a neighborhood
Right,
application.
at least the block area, they can apply for a zone change.
Now, if that happened, for example, we denied the variance, they go through the process, and then it stops. I guess during the process of them applying for that, they don't have to remove their fence, right? Until that's resolved.
If somebody applied tomorrow, I'm sure we wouldn't be enforcing anything, no.
Yeah.
But again, you need additional property owners to qualify. You need at least a block to qualify for the application. Then you need
At
a
least how
certain-
many?
At least a block.
And were they notified about that throughout this whole process?
I don't know. Again, the North Glendale Community Plan process was over 3 years in the making, and so we've had representatives from different groups. We've had outreach, so
It just seems very relevant to this particular.
Now, would you
case.
consider the block between Honolulu and the Wash? Because that's only one house, so it would be pretty
if they wanted to
unanimous.
set, not really, no. No, probably at least to El Lado if they were
Is
asking.
the frontage? No, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, I just asked the question.
Again,
I am going to close the public process. Now, we are closing the public hearing, and the commissioners, who would like to speak first?
You're elected chair.
Oh, does that come with that? I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Greater responsibility.
First, I'll apologize for my voice. But they're never easy. Always very interesting. I have a lot of notes there at random, and I have a real mixed view of this whole process. But for me, I was involved with the North Glendale rezoning process, along with the real estate broker, Mr. Barnes. And as Mr. Wiseman always said, this is the far north Glendale area. And what I will say about the far north Glendale area, La Crescenta, Montrose, and all up in that area, it has evolved differently. And I think anybody that's lived in Glendale for any period of time knows that that's the case. And all you need to do is look at the shape of this lot, and the way it's evolved and how long the trees have grown, and that's easy to understand. I think the width of Honolulu is significant. For me, I think that all of the findings can be made. I think some of the things that are at issue, the shape of the lot, closeness to the wash, the lack of sidewalk, the topographical abnormalities relative to that lot and any particular lot up in that area. I think that's significant. I think it's significant there have been no complaints in the neighborhood, at least that I can identify. I know there must have been a complaint for this investigation to occur. I think it looks good. I think the fact that this has evolved over 50, 60 years is significant. The talk is about, there was some talk about moving the shed. I would say that it was a big mistake to rebuild the shed. It kind of taints this whole idea that I have that this place has evolved over the years. It looks good. Why would I want to move the shed? It's in the perfect spot, and not the shed, but the utility building. I think it's significant that in addition to the zoning, the overlay process that was mentioned in North Glendale plan, in the body of the purpose statement for that group, one of the main things they mentioned is they want to maintain the rustic nature of the area, which I think this is a perfect example of. And the exemption, I think that's significant from the standpoint that, we're talking walls, fences, chicken wire, whatever it is, but I think in this point, that's another whole different issue, but there's a lot of ambiguity and inconsistency with that process that needs to be worked out. And I'll sum it up by saying I have to share this. I have some personal experiences relative to issues similar to this, similar to a structure. I have 3 locations in my neighborhood where this work was done in view of neighborhood services. It was reported. They still exist. They were built illegally, and they're not here. But this gentleman is trying to do the right thing, trying to make this work, trying to get a variance. Those structures are in place. They're unsafe. They're going to impact the neighborhood, and they were done wrong, but somehow it's not being brought into the process, and to me that's ambiguous. It's inconsistent. It makes it difficult for me to think the process is going to support something like we have today. So, with that in mind, I don't see any reason this should be changed. I think we can meet the findings. I trust and value what the staff does in their view and in their task. They're doing the exact right thing. And if I was in their place, I'd do the same thing, because we asked them to do that. We asked them to bring these issues and do this type of research. But then it gets in our hands, and knowing the area, knowing what we're trying to do in the community, I think this place is a good example of what the variance process is for.
Commissioners. Mr. Story, would you like to go next?
Certainly. My take, as far as the findings are concerned, first I have to make a comment. Now, this resolution that was adopted by the council in 2005 excluded the chicken wires and etc. However, since then, it is my understanding that whether or not it's a chicken wire or electrical fence or what have you, there is no enforcement being done anyways. It's in abeyance. So, regardless of the differences and the exceptions into the resolution, the fact of the matter is, the practical fact of the matter is that no enforcement is being conducted at this time or since. Having said that, I know people, I have relatives that live on Whiting Woods that spend thousands of dollars in order to work the oak trees, buy top-notch arborists and so forth. This is how important oak trees is, at least to that area, and of course, generally speaking, to the city of Glendale, because it is an asset and something that needs to be protected. There was a mention of our historical assets and how important it is, and there was, I guess, encroachment in a setback for a historical asset, and that was okay because that was considered important to our heritage, not only for our benefit at this time, but for our children, children's children, and so forth. Well, I hold oak trees in the same reverence, in the same category, and especially when you drive on Whiting Woods. I mean, you can actually sense it, you can see it, and you can touch it. The fact of the matter that the drip line, the theoretical drip line, and I'm not an arborist, and I'm not pretending to be one, but I've had this drip line theory fed to me for thousands of dollars and done structures, seen structures being done a little bit closer or outside the drip line. That oak tree has, gone bad and died in years to come. So I do have a problem with that. The fact of the matter that the applicant has a yard that is opening, and still you can see the branches all over it. I don't believe that moving this thing from the setback, this structure from the setback, would serve any purpose. So that, in my opinion, just the fact of the matter that you cannot touch it, that if you do something, it's going to affect the oak trees, or if there is a chance of affecting the oak trees, that to me is enough to make the hardship finding and the rest. So, albeit I'm going about it in a different manner than Commissioner Sheets is, but I think we see it the same way at the end. I can make all of the findings as well. So it is my opinion that we can make the findings, or at least I can make the findings, and it is my opinion that if this applicant is trying to bring it in parlance with the code, he needs to be afforded that opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Story. Commissioner Hussain.
I think I pretty much agree with the findings that were also made by the last two speakers, commissioners. The property, I didn't think about it, but it makes it unique that being next to the wash, doesn't have sidewalks near it, and well, at the time that it was built, it might have been built before this widening, but we don't know that. And this drip line idea that moving the property anywhere or the accessory building anywhere else may affect it. Now, I like this idea of if there's something there and it's not bugging anybody, I don't see a reason why we need to change it. We do have these codes for a reason, and it has the potential, and it's a big risk to create precedents whenever we do create variances. So that's why we have to take this very seriously. I can find exceptions that we can make here, especially, I think, having such strong support from the neighbors. I think that's important. I am concerned that we didn't have this more detailed of the complaint that was originally made in 2009, and we don't exactly know who it was or what the complaint was, even though I know it doesn't really matter because the property doesn't meet the code, but I think it's still really good to have this stuff on record so we can follow up on it. The fence issue, I would have some concern and some trouble granting the variance for the fence only because if this was sold to somebody else, and I would have a hard time believing he would sell it to somebody else since it's been around so much. But if somebody came in and just cut all of the plants in front of the fence and took it all out, then you have this fence that has a variance. And, I think we're more okay with using it now, maybe granting a variance under the condition that it's at right now because you can't see it. But if somebody took out all those plants, I don't think all these neighbors are going to be happy about that. And I have some trouble granting the variance for that fence, considering that, that may happen someday in the future. It's a possibility. I don't know if we can, I'm not sure if we can grant the variance with the condition that you can't cut it. If that was the case, I might be for doing that. So what I would say is I would be okay with granting the variance for the building. I'm not sure I can make the findings or go so far to do it for the fence as well. So, is that even under the table?
Sure.
It's the fence. We can do it separately, right?
Yes, we can.
All right.
But may I ask you a question? Well,
sure.
I'll wait till you make your comments and then. Perhaps
whatever.
But my question is the following. Now, again, as a practical measure, if we hark back to the resolution of 2005 by this council, that the enforcement of the legality, conformity, non-conformity of these fences, the enforcement is put in abeyance. Why does it need to be part of any resolution? Why can't, or any variance at this time? Because it's not being enforced. I don't know how the practical, maybe the city attorney can.
Sure, members of the commission. It is still a variance from the code. The code still has certain requirements, so whether or not there is an enforcement of code provisions doesn't alleviate the code requirement itself. So until we reach that point where the council is ready to handle the policy issue, some of the policy issue has been handled, as mentioned by Mr. Kraus, that there is an overlay zoning option for the neighborhoods in North Glendale now. There were specific exclusions from that resolution, as you've mentioned, in terms of certain types of fences. It's a upper-level policy decision at this moment, which could be changed virtually at any time by the City Council. So that does not alleviate the requirement in code that fences not be located in the setback area. So until such time that code is modified, it's still a requirement.
So back to your comment, Commissioner Usain, part of these fences, you have a lot of old growth and vegetation that cover these fences and create that barrier, at least that visual barrier from the structure and everything else. I don't know if we are going to be excluding the fences, what kind of an effect that's going to have on the overall scheme of the things. All of a sudden you have a structure that is going to be ostensibly visible. These are the thoughts that come to my mind. So I think, and again, we haven't heard the Chair Landrigan's views, but in my opinion, if we are making the findings, I mean, for me, it's easy to make the findings for the chain as well. So it's chain link fence as well. My thoughts.
Well, first of all, some of our speakers said they just didn't understand the reason this happened. But typically when one makes a change to their house, they come to the city and they show the proposed change on paper, which makes it a lot easier to change the location and to bring out elements that are considered non-conforming so that before it is built, this hardship doesn't exist. So that if it happens without going to the city for approval, that is not considered a hardship. That's self-imposed. So that is where that determination comes from. So even though it sounds like it's a black hat, it's to prevent people from coming in and building something and after the fact coming in and trying to get approval for it. Not assuming that anybody is intentionally doing something illegal, but oftentimes unintentionally they are. So that is one of the reasons why coming in for approval ahead of time resolves a lot of the problems that are existing at the moment. Typically, any structure you build in the city requires a permit, even a fence. But this neighborhood has changed considerably in character from a rural character to a more urban character with the changes to Honolulu, and especially with the changes to Honolulu. It just changed the whole feeling of the neighborhood. The other thing is there is a hardship when you live on a corner. You have two streets and you have two different setbacks, and when you assume you have a frontage and you're looking at it that way, I mean, a lot of times I think the best intentions are based upon not knowing what the city has determined. So I can see that as being a hardship that's really may not be a hardship as far as the city is concerned, but it certainly cuts the usable space that you have in your property down, because if you are on a side street and it's a side street, you have more of a setback than if it is a side yard. And if you are off a front street, you have a different setback, and it varies according to different properties. I think that first of all, the approval process was not sought. And there are other sites on the property that would have probably been more appropriate had a plan been brought in and they would have been discussed and actually presented and created probably a better design. That said, I do have Commissioner Usain's same concern about the chain link fence. Vegetation is temporal, and I am a landscape architect by trade, and I can tell you that I make my living on people removing landscaping and putting in landscaping. So that it's something that is may change at any time. I think the variance is saying that the fencing can remain in the place that it is. That's what the question is. Can it stay in the setback? If the council approves the fencing, it would become illegal and have to come out. So you might be able to put a fence back there, but you'd have to take out the non-conforming fence. So the chain link fence, the material itself, is also a problem. And I'm just saying this because that it's still under discussion. You would know that. Regardless of when it was put in, it's not an accepted material for fencing in the city. So I have that hesitancy that Commissioner Usain has for that reason. The walls, on the other hand, we also require decorated walls right now and retaining walls, and they can't be CMU. Am I correct?
I believe it depends on the visibility from the street.
All right. So there's not that concern. I think that under the circumstances that several of these items do meet the findings that are needed, I don't personally feel that the chain link fence would, and allowing it in there. If the hardship would be that you would not have a sufficient usable space, and right now you do, and moving it back to the required code is not a hardship as far as I'm concerned, and that would be a requirement for the fence, the chain link fence. I think the other walls meet a hardship determination for me, as well as the building, but I would have a difficult time saying that the chain link fence would meet that criteria. And I would think in the long run it would, once the city does come to its final determination on how to enforce the new fence, and I was on the fence committee, so I know how difficult that was to get to. So I would be open to supporting the variance for keeping the building, because if you look at it, and if you were to assume that that was the side yard, it is a minor, it's almost the full 10 feet that it would be if it was a side yard setback from a street. If it was a side yard setback on a property line, it would be 5 feet, or 4 feet. So to me, that seems a very reasonable determination and a hardship based upon the fact that it's 2 roads. I think the retaining walls, I certainly can make this finding, but I would not be comfortable making a determination on the chain link fence, that it meets those criteria. And I am open to discussing it further with my fellow commissioners.
If I may, I believe the applicant did not call it a chain link fence. They called it as landscaping mesh, so.
There's 2 things.
There's other landscaping mesh elsewhere.
On top of the block wall.
On the block wall. It's in the front, yeah.
But not the chain link.
The chain link is on White Woods.
So,
It's truly a chain link.
so viewing that, what would be the solution for him with the chain link? Change the material and move it, or just change the material? What's the situation there?
My recommendation to my fellow commissioners would be that we recommend approval of the variance for the building and the walls. Mr. Foyce would like to advise me here.
I just would call your attention, if you'd like, the Commission would like to consider in the code for fences and walls in residential zones, and this is for those on property lines, which this is not, but if the Commission may consider this, the materials say they shall be made of wood, masonry, decorative metal, for example, wrought iron, or other decorative materials. In addition to those materials, chain link may be permitted if screened from view from adjacent parcels by vegetation.
But that's property line.
It does, but
And so,
But doesn't that speak to the issue of, well, I'm not that well versed on the fence ordinance, but one of the comments that was made was relative to the landscaping not being permanent, relative to the fence. So right now, it does cover it up. So, from that standpoint, I was thinking not chain link fence, but whatever that structure was with the growth on it seemed to be acceptable to me. So.
well, the reason I think it's acceptable on property lines is that it's not part of the public view. When it becomes adjacent to a street, that's the determinant there.
Yeah, and we go back to the same point. You have the corner lot, but it's faced by Honolulu.
Whiting and the
Wash. Yeah, so I think that just further buffers the viewing of, it just makes the whole issue of this lot being abnormal, I think just supports the unique situation. I'd be okay with it like it is. That doesn't, but I want to make sure we prove the variance, and if that's a stipulation, I can work through that. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. I can accept it as it is, and I think it's been there for 60 years or longer. It's going to be there many more years. It's an asset to the community. It looks good, and he likes living there. I just think that we could make that. I think we could make that happen.
Not the bare chain link with the vegetation on it is an asset to the community.
That too.
The chain link or the vegetation?
Yes.
Both.
Yes. I didn't see, I just looked at it as what it is today, and I think that is positive.
Well, if there is further discussion, please.
I would want to do what your recommendation was, to do the building separately and then the fence issue separately. Is grant the variance for the building, and then the fence, or grant the variance for the wall too, and then the fence
would be excluded.
But we would still have to discuss that again, right?
No, not if we we can make, it's up to us as the discerning body here now to decide if those findings are met or not met for those areas, and to approve as many of those elements that meet those findings, and if they don't, we can exclude it from the variance.
Well,
He can appeal that, but my guess is that he would be not inclined to do that.
Understood. And because the way that it stands, just
2-2.
Yeah, we do pretty much, at least there is some sort of a consensus on the structures.
Correct.
I think.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring to the Commission's attention that you can place conditions on a variance, and a condition that has a nexus, in this case requiring landscaping to be maintained. Front yard landscaping is required to be maintained in front setback areas, as is. There is a condition that allows chain link fences to be maintained on property lines so long as they are landscaped. So clearly there is a
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
here in terms of placing a condition if that assists the Commission in their deliberations.
That would change the way I would vote.
So explain something to me. What was the difference between what I said and what the city attorney said?
Well, I think...
A law degree.
Well, I guess what I read into that is that it was on a property line. In this case, it's not.
Right.
So that's the thing we're dealing with. Do we leave it there, or are we going to have to move it? I say leave it there because it meets the criteria. And oh, by the way, it slipped off a few inches. It's not feet. It's inches, I think.
If I may suggest the following: if we can, all of us, pretty much make the findings for the structure and the walls, and if it is acceptable to Chair Landrigan and Commissioner Yasayan, that we come up with a condition that these chain link fences or parts of landscaping mesh, as they would call it, be maintained. I don't know time limits and so forth, and this is something that perhaps Mr. Foy and the city attorney can help us with vegetation as to such that so it's not a bare chain link. I would be okay with it. So
I'd be okay with that too.
Variance runs with the land.
Correct.
And time limits can be placed on variances if that's the Commission's choice.
But the landscaping would be expected to be maintained in perpetuity with the variance.
Yes, for the duration of the variance that runs with the land. That's correct.
And if I may, one more layer of bureaucracy here. The type of the landscaping that is going to go on there, who is going to, we are going to leave that to the discretion of the staff, arborist and so forth, right?
As long as it is
My landscaping, I mean, I can put
evergreen and covers, and it doesn't have to be a vine, it can be shrubs, I'm sure, as long as it is
that's
screened.
your purview, Commissioner, the
There
Chair
are a lot of
Landrigan.
options.
So perhaps you
I
may
think
want to recommend some.
Well, it's not that easy.
I don't think we want to limit it to.
No, I think we don't
anything.
want to limit it. A person has their own preferences. So if staff wants to propose some language that...
For the landscaping?
Yeah.
Well, I like your ideas of evergreen and to essentially cover it, but I would make it to the satisfaction of the community development director, the city arborist.
I think so.
Trees.
And, maintaining, an 80% coverage.
Sure.
That way, if you have a deciduous plant, you might still have some coverage.
About the urban forester, too, because there's a lot of oak trees.
And the urban forester could be part of the approval.
I believe that the urban forester looks only at trees.
Yes, but the landscaping and the type of irrigation required for it beneath an oak tree is...
It's all oak tree.
Good point.
So that would be within the purview of the urban...
Well, I think it sounds like, I'm not sure, do we have an urban arborist? I don't think we have. Which arborist are we referring to?
We do have an urban forester, so we could make it to the satisfaction of an urban forester.
Community Development Director and the city urban forester.
And if you wouldn't mind, Commissioner Sheets and Chairperson Landrigan and Usain, I know you can put a time limit on this variance as it runs with the land. As I don't want to do that either. I mean, I'm against putting any time limits on it.
Yeah,
We concur.
I agree.
Chair Landrigan,
Yes.
I would mention that there is an option if you would like to direct staff. We're listening to your conversation. You can direct us to come back at a future meeting with draft conditions and draft findings.
Based upon our
Based upon your recommendations, because sort of what I'm hearing now is
make it
that
much clearer.
perhaps the location of the building is fine, perhaps the location of the wall is fine. There's some conditions I hear that you might want to add to the fence. So perhaps maybe the location of the fence would be fine with the conditions added.
Exactly.
Correct.
So you might want to consider
So final
getting us-
language to be,
That'll be perfect.
Yeah, because we would, you would need to make findings because findings were not provided in your packet for an approval.
right.
And I think we've heard your deliberations. I think we know what facts you are looking at for supporting the variance findings. So you may want to give us that direction.
Thank you.
That's a great idea.
And the hardscape and the basketball hoop are also okay?
Yes.
All right, do I want
To move
to have somebody provide a motion?
Do we move to continue it on a date
Date certain.
certain?
And that date will be our next meeting,
We could put it on the next agenda.
which is February
15.
Right now, we have one item scheduled for February 15th. I'm not sure that that's going to go through because it's still being reviewed by another department.
Oh, no.
So do we,
So I do know there will be a meeting,
So do we?
on the first meeting in...
I think so. Do we do the motion
March.
to be, can we make a motion based upon the final language coming forward and vote on it? Or do we need to wait until we have the findings? What's the best?
Commission members, you should wait until you have the final language before you, including the condition set for your approval. It would be continued to a date certain without further public notice.
All right.
then we'd make the
So
final motion
Mr.
at that
Usain
time.
has made
Would
that
make the-
motion,
yes,
and I need a
final.
second.
Second. Yep. I third it.
I have 2 seconds, and so will you please call roll?
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Sheets?
Aye.
Commissioner Yasayan?
Aye.
And Chairperson Landrigan?
Aye. The item has been continued so that we can have the findings and the actual conditions brought to us to the next meeting of the Planning Commission. Without further notice. And thank you all very much for that, your patience in our deliberations. We have here for us, next, any Planning Commission items. Mr. Sheets, I thought you had an
I
item.
do have one. Since Chairperson Landrigan and myself happen to be members with the Parks and Recreation, the Open Space Foundation, I wanted to hand out some flyers to the Commission about our the upcoming trail run and hike, Verdugo Mountains 10K, which started out last year. We put it together with the help of the staff, with Mark Landrigan, and we looked to maybe get 250.
Really, Mark Sturdivant.
Mark
We're
Sturdivant.
not married.
Sorry about that. But we wanted to have 250 people there. We wanted to raise money for the foundation so we can help and enhance the park programs, which is really a wonderful program. Instead of 250, I think we ended up with closer to 500 participants. It was a beautiful run.
Wow.
We're handing out these flyers earlier this year because I think that was a big component, a big part of how we got so many people to turn up. And we've heard, even in walking these flyers this year, people at the races where we're handing out the flyers tell us they were at the race. And I would recommend that if I give a few of these flyers around,
Absolutely.
you'll hand them out and try to make it, because even if you don't do the run, which I'm not even going to think about, to run through the hills, it was a beautiful setting, it was prepared well, and there were family members, people with small families, young families, participants of all ages. It was a wonderful event, and it also brings great funding for our foundation that we can put back into the city and back into the parks programs.
That is great.
I'd like to, Chair Landrigan and Commissioner Sheets, I'd like to take a few more. I have 2 board meetings with the Glendale Chamber and the Glendale Board of Realtors.
Take them, and if you need more, I can get you
Or
more.
if there is a website,
Yeah.
I can have it printed.
It's on there.
It's on there. Okay.
If I get a lot more,
Not a problem.
They have the website.
I'll have a
yeah, I
1,000 on
have
this
some
weekend.
meetings I'm going to go to, so I can pass it all out to
Perfect.
them.
Any of that would be helpful. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sheets. Any other items from our commission? Any planning division updates?
Just that we do have some appeals that were heard by the Planning Commission. They're going to be appealed to council, so we'll be sending an email as soon as we have those dates scheduled.
Any further comments from the commission? Mr. Foy? All right. Then I would be
I move
open
that we adjourn.
all right. Thank you.
Nice.
All right. We are
Thanks,
adjourned.
guys.
We're out of here. Good job.